I am particularly interested in looking at the 6 mystical ways again in my process. Many years ago, I think it was when I was in America in the late 90s. I think it was in Sedona, Arizona in 98 or 99 that I did the 6 mystical ways. And it was an extraordinary experience to be able to go through the information. But it's 7 years ago, and I did it over a couple of days. And here there's, this opportunity to really be able to elaborate on this over an 11-week program. But it's more than that. The mystical way is coming to an end. And I think it's important to really understand not where it's going to take us, because its time is nearly done. 2027 will bring an end to the mystical circuit. It will no longer function in the sense of the way in which it has been a mystical circuit as long as there has been a potential in humanity. And the fact that this is something that's coming to an end in many ways is a deep expression of our time. I'm fond of saying that we have reached the end of the era of innovation, that this era of innovation is coming to an end. There is, in a sense, a deep creative process in humanity that is coming to an end. And it is a creative process, and it is a creative process that has been rooted in humanity's fertility. That is, as an expression of our evolutionary chain, the vitality and fertility and creativity that has moved Homo sapien from, the savannas of Africa to the moon. And that has been quite something. And that creative fertility is dying. And it's dying because our strain of the species in this evolutionary progression is coming to an end. It's what 2027 is all about. It's what the Rave is all about. It is about the emergence of a new variation on the species. And of course we have had these events many times before. We have historical evidence of the cohabitation of so-called Neanderthals and modern humans who were given the name Cro-Magnon. They lived side by side. The Neanderthal had its time, probably as much as 1.5 million years of being the dominant variant on the planet. And during its time, as its time came to an end, Cro-Magnon appeared. And they lived side by side. Here in Spain, on the mainland, in Catalonia and Basque Country, particularly in Basque Country, there is Neolithic evidence, archaeological evidence of Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal being in the same places at basically the same time. There are many who have theorized that Cro-Magnon ultimately exterminated Neanderthal here in Spain. Whether or not that is true is uncertain. Nobody really knows in that sense whether the new turned against the old because of competition and its obvious advantages in terms of the development of what we have as a neocortex and its potential for self-reflected consciousness and strategy making. We don't really know, but what we do know historically is that this is not new. This is in the formula. And what I'm going to bring you through in this semester is the beauty and the potential of our creative fertility, and to be able to see what it brought us, and also to understand that in its coming to an end, the very way in which we understand the nature of being is going to be deeply transformed in the next cycle. I mean, deeply transformed. You can get a sense of it by looking at the explosion that exists in the New Age. There are zillions of therapies, remedies, secret knowledge, hidden knowledge, old knowledge, new knowledge, you name it. There is all of this stuff pointing humanity in myriad, endless variants of variations of mystical, spiritual, religious, whatever you want to call these things. They're all there shining out at the end as if there is a promise that there is somewhere to go. And there isn't. There isn't. The knowledge, as it was given to me, there are still circuitries that I have not taught, that I was given. Memory circuit, for example, which I guess one day I should teach, but I've never taught it. The mystical ways is just a circuit. It's a specific circuit, like the basic circuits that you're taught when you enter into human design. The logic circuit and the sensing circuit and the individual and so forth and so on. It's just another one of those circuits. And the key in the circuitry, it is the key always in circuitry, is where's the pressure? If you look at circuits, and I mean they're fascinating, but if you just look at them separate from everything else, you just explore them. Now, what you get to understand is that circuits are all about pressure. They're all about pressure. It's either the dynamic pressure of the adrenal root, or it is the abstract, mental, logic, individual pressure of the head center. But circuits are all about pressure. And without the pressure, well, the circuit has no reason to be. There is nothing to drive it or to move it. It's all about pressure. And when we look at I'm just checking something. When we look at the stream itself, the first thing that you have to look at and have to understand is that the pressure of the mystical stream, the pressure of the mystical way, is rooted in the 19th gate approach. Over the years, and particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, I've spent a lot of time discussing the mystical process, the 2027 Rave children. I've talked a lot about the 19th gate and what will happen when 2027 comes and we begin to deal with the mutation. And then just to refresh your memories, and for those of you that don't know, I just want to point out a couple of things about what we're approaching in 2027 relative to the 19th gate. And the first thing is that really the dilemma is not so much that the 19th gate wants to cut off its relationship to the emotional system, is that the emotional system, the real revolution of the 49, is that the emotional system will cut itself off from the 19. Now, think about the 19 for a moment. And this channel, the 1949, the channel of synthesis, this is the stream of need. Need. It's not about passion or desire. It is about need. What you need. It's about need. There's something so deep to understand, is that when the 19th gate is cut off from the 49, we're not just talking about, as we will in this case, the impact on a circuit losing its pressure source. It's not just that. The ramifications are enormous, because all of them are part and parcel of humanity dying, of humanity losing its fertility, losing its needs, the very needs that give humanity much more than just simply the mystical way. But give humanity the capacity to bond together in mutual support systems, all kinds of things. The 49th gate, it's the revolution gate. And the 49th gate is it's sort of the black ghost to the white 55. It's almost like the Sirius story, where you have a dark companion that shows up. The 49 is the hidden dark companion of the 55. It really is. See, they're both the same codon. They both have deeply, deeply, deeply similar chemistries. Whatever is happening to the 55th gate in its process of bringing the mutation to the solar plex system, that at a chemical level, this is taking place within the context of histidine, and the 49th gate is being deeply impacted by it, literally pulling it off. And the thing to recognize about the 49th gate is that when the mutation hits the 49th gate, it cuts the link. It cuts the link. What's actually happening in this mutation? This is one of the deepest things to think about. We have a phenomena, the way in which we understand the solar plex system, and the way in which we understand the solar plex system is that we understand it through the wave principle. It's the only way we have access to it. As a matter of fact, it's very difficult in that sense to get to anything else because of the wave factor. And we know that this is the motor function. After all, this is one of the things that's very basic in human design. The solar plex center is a motor. It is a motor, and it's also an awareness center, or a potential awareness center. And obviously it makes quite a difference when we look at other awareness centers. That is, the classic splenic center that is under-energized. The ajna center. These are not motors. They're not motors. And the thing to be clear about is that the human experience of the solar plex center is the motor experience. It's the motor experience. And it is the motor experience of the solar plex that is responsible for the way in which the channels from the root to the solar plex and the solar plex elsewhere operate. Think about that. It's like the way the not-self strategy rules the not-self life. The motor rules the way in which these channels operate. Think about the wave. where does the neediness come from? Or the passion or the desire? It comes from having alternating feelings. This need is driven by the very fact that there is no stability in the wave. There's always something to need, always something to be passionate about, always something to desire, and all of this is the emotional system, the motor. The motor. See, the work of histidine is that it's going to turn the damn motor off. And it's not going to be able to turn it off for humans. This is a mutation after all. Some will carry it, some won't. Those who carry the mutation, they are going to carry the pure work of the 55 and the way and ultimately it impacts everything else, the 49 and on, the 59 and then to the 6, and this is the whole story. Remember that if you're thinking about the motor's here in the 6th gate. If you think about the 55, histidine, the 55's polarity is the 59th gate in the sacral. And the 59th, obviously, the harmonic to the 6. And it is this track, 55 to the 59 to the 6, that in the pure mutation of the Rave child literally turns off the motor at the 6. Because this is where the motor originates. But it doesn't mean that it's only going to exclusively impact those that are mutated. Specifically, in other words, those that are born Rave children. There is a byproduct to this, and it is a dysfunction that literally is slowly going to appear in the genetic mix of everyone. It's happening now. It's happening with these 1333 generation, the forking of the past generation. And that is the impact that it has on the 49. The impact of the mutative process on the 49 is that, in medical terminology, you could call it an aneurysm, or you could call it if we could think about it as a channel, you could think about it as being squeezed, and slowly but surely, because it becomes so narrow, in a sense it becomes clogged. And that clogging no longer allows the channel to operate properly. Now, of course, there aren't real channels in that sense in us. There are geometrical pathways that are sparked, and the sparking that's there at the 49, this mutates, and it's going to cut this channel. And what that means is that as the generations are born out of this time and onward, in other words, the 13 generation and onward, that we're going to have more and more visible dysfunction in this channel. More and more. And so, it isn't going to totally turn off in the sense that it is an absolute. It will peter out like fertility, in the same way that the 59/6, this squeezing off of motor function, is going to make natural fertility very, very difficult, and of course emblematic of this whole movement of humanity towards its completion. There won't be enough time. If we had another 1,000,000 years, and we were going to go through many different evolutionary processes, then it would get to a point where it would cut off entirely, and my assumption would be that at that complete cutoff, the species literally would no longer be able, at least in any natural sense, to reproduce itself. It doesn't say that there wouldn't be, in the case of humans, technologies to compensate for that, If you're an investor and you want your grandchildren to be rich, then invest in anything that is involved in artificial fertility, and you will see that, that will always bring great wealth. So we have a dilemma. And the dilemma is that, well, it's not a dilemma. I guess in some ways it can be, where I'm about to take you can be taken in quite pessimistically, or it could be depressing, I suppose, to think that the mystical process is at an end. Well, what to do? It is. It is no longer going to be needed, It's all about the 19. This 19th gate of approach. Wow, if you take a circuit and you strip it of its pressure, there is no circuit. There isn't. If you strip the mystical way of the 19th gate, there is no longer a mystical potential. And it means not only does this side of the equation change, but everything on this part of the equation, is really going to be impacted. This circuit, the mystical way, it obviously could have many names. You could call it the mystical way, the spiritual way, the holy way, the natural way, this way, that way, the God way, whatever you want to call it. You can call it the Buddhist way, or the Hindu way, or the Jewish way, or the Muslim Christian way. You name it, you can put any kind of adjective, if you like, in front of that way. And if and any of those adjectives can go there, as long as the theme is, one's relationship with transcendent forces. Period. Whatever that may be. That means that the mystical way can be devil worship, and it can be polytheistic, monotheistic, zillitheistic, whatever you want. It can be anything, and it's really something to grasp about us. There's this. I got a wonderful email from an artist friend of mine. He's a graphic artist, been a graphic artist for, 30, 40 years. And once a year he sends me an image as a kind of greeting. And there's a drawing of a pope in front of this huge doorway. And he's got a megaphone in his hand, and he's shouting, "My God's better than your God." And it's hilarious for me when I look at the mystical way to see that we all have the process built into us, all of us, and that there is no religion, spiritual philosophy, whatever, that doesn't fit into this mystical way. They're all a part of it. It is the underlying mechanic. It's like what hopefully I was able to show you in the band too, is that we have a vast collection of gods and goddesses on this planet, and basically they can be grouped together into mechanical archetypes, and that it's not about one being better than the other, or one belonging only to this people or that people, or whatever the case may be. It's just always been there. Always. It is the mystical way, and it is something to understand about the 19th gate, this gate of approach. To move towards God is what the 19th gate has brought us. And isn't it ironic that the new cycle and the death of humanity will bring an end to the need for God. Oh, could I piss off a lot of Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, and Jews with that one, eh? I mean, what happens when the 19th gate closes off? You know? There's no need for God. It says something interesting about humans. Hey, we're God fucked. Hey, humans. I mean, we're really caught in the God trip. Hey, the goddess, God. You know, whatever you want to call them, demigods, half gods, whole gods, sons of gods, mothers of God. You know, we got such an incredible God trip. It's human to have a God trip. It's human. You know, just as the 41 to the 30 to the 36 to the 35 is the human experiential way, yeah, you know, so we all get lined up into that, you know, experiential process. This is the human mystical way, and it designs us to go out there and seek God, and the door's going to close. You know, I talk a lot about why we have a time in which there is such fundamentalism in every faith. Eh? I mean, in every kind of thing, you know, whether it's fundamentalist yoga gurus, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. You've got this, you know, extreme visceral tension that is out there in the spiritual world because the door is closing. It's not about God. I mean, you know, God is a thing for humans to pursue, and what they are pursuing is only knowledge. I mean, what they're pursuing is knowledge. You know, this stream, it ends with awakening, you know. This is the pursuit. It's for awakening, to be initiated into awakening. I mean, and it's not about waking up and saying, oh, wow, you know, Mohammed has the whole story. You know, it isn't. I mean, the most magical thing for me about the mystical way is this incredible balance between the individual and the deeply individual. And you're talking about aspects of minor individual circuits that are very, 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 very mutative. The 2010 that you only find in integration, and the 2551, which is part of the centering circuit. And then you see it balanced with the 1949 and the 4037. In other words, that, you know, the pressure is tribal. It's tribal. It's not like you're designed to maybe want to need the Godhead and awakening yourself. Oh no, it's a pressure system. And it's a powerful tribal pressure system where you've got all of this. You need to be this way. You need to go to church today. You know, you need to go to Sunday school. You need to learn your blah, blah, blah. You know, you need to read your Quran. You need to. And there is all this social tribal pressure. Not only that, in the 4037, you got to build the goddamn temples. All of them. One after the other, you know, the sweat off your back. I'll never forget my experience of, I lived in southern Bavaria for a couple of years. It's very beautiful. And they have some incredible Baroque churches. I mean, absolutely magnificent. And there was a church in my village, a jewel. I mean, an absolute jewel. It was built in the early mid-18th century, 1730, 1740, something like that. It's beautiful enough that it's on tourist maps. You know, it's that kind of place. At that time, everybody who lived in that area was dirt poor. Isn't even a description. I mean, they were poor, and life was hard, and it was difficult. You know, this was not a greatly advantaged environment, and yet this church, oh wow, it's nothing but gold. I mean, it's nothing but gold. Gilt here and gilt there. And the most, detailed, shiny, it truly, when you open the door and you walk into this place, you think you're in the middle of a jewel. It's nothing but sparkle. And you think about tribal pressure. These poor people, they had to give 1 day a year. They had to give 1 day a week while this thing was being built. Took, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years to work on this, to build it. And then on Sunday the bell would ring. And here would be these beings, deeply poor. And they would come and they would open the door, and there would be this incredible paradise on earth, this shining light. This is all part of the tribal, mystical, religious, and the pressure. You got to build it. You got to go there. You got to be part of it. You got to get into the traditions. You got to live the traditions. The traditions define you. We live in a world where, this religion and that religion hate each other. Lots of it. All over. This sect hates that sect. All over. I mean, this is all tribal stuff. And you can see that it is this tribal force. 3 motors, after all. 3 motors. Right? The root, the emotions, the ego. This is incredibly powerful stuff. And where does it go? It doesn't go where the tribe normally goes. It doesn't go into the 21 to the 45. It doesn't take the material way. It doesn't follow the money line. It suddenly finds itself. This is the road. And at the 25th gate, standing there at the 25th gate, is the priest or the priestess or the shaman that's going to remind you that your purpose is here in awakening. And all of that is our story. It's not the Rave's story. It wasn't Neanderthal's story. It's just our story. It's what the movie looks like for humans. And it's going. That's the thing that's so extraordinary to understand. These children that are coming into the world, they're going to be less and less needy of God, of religion, of spirituality, of faith, of priests, of priestesses. We're moving into an age, into a cycle that is deeply, deeply, deeply individualistic. Deeply. For humans, not raves, for humans, it's going to be an enormous challenge these next 1,300 years or so. Enormous challenge. And what's it going to be like? You see, the 19th gate doesn't just bring the mystical way, if I can put it that way. The mystical way is the 6 mystical ways. And the 6, obviously, is a reference to line and to line themes. And yet, if you spend enough time in human design, you know that different areas of investigation carry different keynoting. If you look at the 19th gate in sexuality, it is the gate of flirtation. Think about that. No more flirting. A whole generation of people who don't flirt. Isn't that going to be interesting? Anyway, there are different keynotes. There are different keynotes depending on where you're looking. And when we're dealing with the 19th gate, the specific keynotes of the 19th gate and their relationship to this mystical process, that these are no longer going to be forces that drive us towards awakening. I'll come back to that in a while. If we look at the stream itself, let's begin with understanding something about the 4037, because the 4037 is different in the way in which it operates in the stream. You can see that illustrated by the fact that this channel is drawn in this sense in red, whereas the other 3 channels are drawn in the black. There are only 3 mystical channels, so-called. And when I say that, what I mean is that the fact that you have one doesn't really mean anything other than the fact that you have a predisposition to that aspect of the mystical process. Remember that when you factor in not self, color transference and all the other things that are going on in the world, the human beings who normally carry the mystical way don't necessarily reach a place of unique awareness and recognition. They don't. They tend to live out the not-self variant of the mystical way, which is the homogenized way in which we are conditioned to go through these various processes. When we're looking at the so-called mystical channels, the 1949, obviously this is the channel of synthesis, and very important to understand that this is the whole basis of need in our lives, and that half of the mystical way is needy. Need's very powerful, the way in which it drives us. Now the 4037 is called a mystical bridge. A mystical bridge. Think about the 1156 for a moment. The ajna to the throat. The 1156 is the channel of curiosity, and it is the design of a seeker, a searcher. And I've often talked about the fact that the 11th gate is the gate of white magic. And one of the things to understand about the 1156 is that it's designed to seek, but it isn't built to find. That can often be very cruel. It's like the Americans in Iraq. They designed a good war plan, but not a good after-war plan. It's like the way that works. There's a limitation. And there is a limitation in ideas for that very reason. Is that ideas don't necessarily, even when they're wonderful ideas, don't necessarily take you to where you need to go in that sense. These are about seekers. It is about curiosity itself, because curiosity broadens the potential of humanity to learn. Think about the 4037. In this context, as a bridge, it is the search for, the support for, the belief in a Godhead. Search for the support for the belief in the Godhead. And as you will see, the 37th gate is a gate of believing. And it's a gate of believing in the emotional sense, which means that, it can be very upset with God in that sense. But it wants God desperately. It desperately needs God in its life, like some people need food. And the 40th gate is a gate of denial. There is no God. There is no God. And the 37th gate says, I know there's a God. I want there to be a God so bad. And they're both searching. And the 4037 is this bridge. One of the most powerful mystical gates that you can have is the 40th gate. If you look at the Satori Enlightenment stories of so many, you discover that they were deniers before they were believers, much like myself. The 40th gate is very powerful in denying that. And again, that denial is not to be seen as knowing that there is no God. The denial is the beginning of the individual process. The individual process. I mean, in a sense, you could say that the 19 to the 40 is Catholic and the 51 to the 20 is Protestant, in the sense that there is a real reformation that takes place in which, the individual is given the opportunity to find its relationship with the Godhead. The Great Awakening, the Satori, the recognition, all of that stuff. You see, when you think about our history, our written history, our written spiritual and religious history, you get to see that just about everything that is important to human beings, everything, and everything about the way in which we have developed our social awareness, our sense of what is divine and what isn't, what is beautiful and what is not, what is correct and what is not, the fundamental moralities that we have. All of that's dying. I mean, it's dying. It's really something to think about. It was just part of the Homo sapien movie. I mean, just part of the movie. It's like if we could have one of those science fiction time travel movies. We take the whole class and, we take the whole class and we go zapping 500 years into the future. And we meet some people and we say, are you mystical? And they look at you like you're nuts. And you say, are you religious? And they look at you like you're nuts. They don't know what you're talking about. Do you believe in God? What's that? I don't think we can imagine that. I don't think we can imagine that. And it's really something to grasp, that what's coming to an end isn't just simply a cycle. What's coming to an end is the door closing on human fertility, and human fertility has been driven in part by the pressure of the 19th gate, driving this process. And through this process, bringing all of us, in that sense, into the completion of the Eden myth. If you think about the mystical way, this is really, the go forth and get the knowledge part of the whole process. Find out. Get to the root of it all. Find out why. Find out who. Find these things, because this is what it is to be human. It's all part of our intellectual, self-reflected consciousness story. Think about it in another way. The 1949 is a facility that exists in hard copy, in the sense that it is part of our vehicle's physical infrastructure to have this relationship between the adrenal system and the solar plex. It's how it's driven. It's there in the biology, and the moment that this is going to change, it's just not going to be there. And the reason that it's been there all of these years is because it has functioned this way. It's part of what it is to be human. We needed the mystical way in order to fulfill our role as human beings. Raves won't. It's not like raves are going to have discussions about God. They're not. Or spirituality, or mysticism, or any of those things. This is us. We're primitive compared to what's coming. The Godhead has been the enormous carrot. It's a huge carrot that's been held in front of us forever. To move us away from our fears. To give us a sense of what's possible, to, find the beauty within what it is to be us and all that stuff. And more than that, it's what's bonded us together. Oh, what a revolution it's going to be when that no longer operates. You know, the tribe is a lot of things, but when you take away the right-hand side of the tribe, you know, you literally eviscerate the social infrastructure. You just do. You tear it apart. I mean, you tear it apart. You know, what holds these tribes together? You can see that. You look out at the world around you. Tribes are held together by their mutual support systems, their common traditions and beliefs. This is what we think of as tribe. And when you go into any community, you know, it's one of the jokes about Ibiza. It's one of the most cosmopolitan places in the world, but it's nothing but ghettos. You know, deeply cosmopolitan, but nothing but ghettos. There's a little English enclave here, and a French one over there, and a Dutch one over there, and a German one over there, and so forth and so on. You know, this is humanity. I mean, this is what we're like. Oh, we got the same God. Okay. We're on the same team. You know, we have the same traditions. You know, we follow the same practices. That gives us a sense of bonding, brotherhood, sisterhood, blah, 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 all of that stuff. It's what holds the tribe together. Not only does it hold it together, but it forms the foundation of their defense systems, their warrior nature, their willingness to fight for their God, kill for their God. You know, and on and on and on. It's all going away. And there's nothing more dangerous than when the door closes. You know, all these thumbs that get caught in the jamb of the door. Right? I mean, this is the age we're living in now. The door is slamming on beings, you know. How many human beings every single day are being killed right now because of my God's better than your God, my way's better than your way, don't touch my tradition or I'll kill you. You know, don't try to pollute, you know, my genetic pool, my environment, my neighborhood. It goes on and on and on and on and on. It just does. And this is not a backlash. This is the last gasp of it. So when you're looking at the 4037, think about it in the context that the most dynamic spiritual era in humanity's history has been during this cycle. You know, this cycle from the beginning of the 17th century until 2027. This is the 4037 operating during a time in which the global cycle is across a planning cycle. If you look out in the world over the last 400 years, more temples have been built than all the temples that were ever built in the history of humanity. That there are more human beings that put their knees down to God today than if you added all of the human beings that ever lived before. You know, it's extraordinary, this search. And we see it in so many ways. You know, whether you see it as esoteric, new age, counterculture, traditional, this and that, and all the various things. And this is the end of it. It's not the flowering of it. It's the end of it. And for me, all I can say is, good riddance. You know, it's been a great killer. I do understand the value of the mystical way. I see how it has expanded the consciousness of humanity through unique experiences in individuals, and how this is permeated through humanity and in many ways enriched many civilizations. But yet at the same time to understand that this is not an absolute, that God is not an absolute. It's not. I know. I truly do. It's just a human joke, you know, that lots of humans have been telling each other since the beginning of time, because we have no choice, because we are designed We are designed to seek the mystical in this way, under this pressure, through this process, over and 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 over again. It's such an old formula, it's unbelievable. It is the human formula. And aren't we lucky? We get to see the door close, And each and every one of you, in your own way, are going to have to think about this God business and put that in perspective. If God is simply the function of a codon, when the codon no longer functions properly, ergo, God goes away. Isn't that funny? It's not like God is there despite what you do and despite your chemistry. The existence of God for humanity is a direct byproduct of the normal functioning of the 19th gate to the emotional system, to the 49 and the motor. That's where God is. Not up in the sky. God's in the 19th gate, sitting there, smiling benignly or not, The good God or the bad God, the male God or the female God, the whole concept of God, it's there. It's the pressure for it. And you see, it's not about God. It's what you can grasp from the Bantu, is that there are obviously mechanisms that we can dress up as great forces. The Siriuses and Jupiters and, But this isn't the human idea of God. And there is no way that we can go beyond the ring past naught, that is, beyond the moment of singularity and the beginning of the biverse, the Big Bang. It is beyond our ken. There is no way that we can penetrate that veil. And in not penetrating that veil, there is no answer or question. And that's something very, very difficult for humans to grasp. That there are some things that have no answer and no question. Within the context of the biverse, within the context of the totality as we know it, the experience of God is just genetic. What I wanted to talk about, and it's just as a basic introduction now, after all, we're going to go through all of this rather deeply. I just wanted to give you a sense of the underlying pressures, what the 19 really brings in this context. And in being able to just think about these, is to also recognize that this is also something that is going to be slowly cut off in that sense. So let's begin with the first line. This is the pressure to wonder. To wonder. I mean, it is the very foundation, and you can see the pressure to wonder or not, all binaries. It is the pressure that it's at the very basis of the experiential mystical process, this wonder, the wonder of, looking at nature, looking at one's own hand, looking at the night sky, the wonder that comes out of that. And of course that wonder leads to what we understand of a first line process of investigation. Now think about something. As I said, when you're looking at different levels of understanding and design, you have different qualities of keynoting. And the quality of keynoting is specific to a phenomena. So, the keynote values that are here in the 19th gate, as long as this has been functioning correctly, these values, through genetic continuity, are properties of everything else. So, for example, if you talk about somebody who has a personality sun, and that's a first line personality sun in their profile, that part of that investigation and introspection is also wonder. It's part of it, and it's part of it through the genetic continuity. But you see, this wonder is connected to this process of the relationship of the 19 to the 49. It's very specific to this. And of course, the moment that we're going to have dysfunction in the way in which this relationship operates, then slowly but surely, the wonder that has been part of every first line will disappear. Think about that. That's quite something. See, I talk about the age of innovation coming to an end. Well, if innovation is going to come to an end, if, the interest in the Godhead is going to come to an end, it can only come to an end if there's no more wondering. It's that simple. It's wonder that moves us to that. Why investigate anything if that pressure isn't there? What kind of investigation is that actually? Or will it just become more introversion and introspection and fear than anything else? I mean, after all, the first line, fear, finds its balance through the wonder. You can be a primitive and lightning strikes the ground, and you can be filled with both fear and wonder at the same moment. And the wonder is the escape from the fear. And the goal is the investigation that leads to a foundation that eliminates the fear entirely. Well, wonder is something that is coming to an end. The pressure to receive the call or not. If there's no pressure to receive the call, think about all the twos. Think about the twos. They're hermits. They're hermits. They're natural hermits. And what's the thing that brings them out of their being a hermit? Is the call. Is the call. And when you look at any second line anywhere in design, through genetic continuity, we know all second lines are here to be called. But being here to be called doesn't mean that there is necessarily the pressure to receive the call. And if there's no pressure to receive the call, what do you think the hermit's going to do? We're moving into an age of individuality. Individuality brings aloneness, not necessarily loneliness, but it brings aloneness. All second lines are going to lose their capacity in that sense because the pressure is gone. The pressure. It is the very existence of the 19th gate and the way in which it operates relative to the 49th gate that determines these qualities and the continuity of any of these lines. Think about the third line, trial and error, discovery. Here's the pressure to attune or not. You think there's going to be discovery in trial and error if there's no attunement to the process? And what will that mean for the third line way? And what will that mean for materialism as a whole? No longer being under a pressure to attune. And look at the four. The pressure to influence. You look at the genetic continuity of all fourth lines, their opportunism, their networking, their capacity to influence. But if there's no pressure to do so, is there any need to have a network at all? Is there any need to be nice? Is there? Oh, and look at the fives. Boy, am I glad I'm here now. The pressure to call. I mean, that's what a heretic's all about, right? If there's no pressure to call, then what is the heretic? Doesn't exist. There's no more messengers. There's no pressure. There's no pressure to let anybody know. There's no pressure to tell them. None. And what will that mean when the pressure to call is removed from the genetic continuity of fifth lines, will they become just more paranoid, more isolated, upstairs on the second floor with the blinds drawn? And the six, the pressure to separate or not. This pressure to find the divine role, because that's what it's about, to find the divine role. It's gone. No pressure to be a role model. No pressure to be the true leader. There's no pressure. And again, you have to think about the genetic continuity of these lines. See, we talk about food chains and life chains and all of these things, in an attempt to get the youngest child to understand that all life forms, all life, all things are interconnected and interwoven. That if you take away all the mosquitoes as much as you hate them, you're going to have another problem in its place. That everything impacts everything else. I do not want you to see the transformation that will take place in the 19th gate in isolation. You have to see it in its larger context, how it is going to affect everything about what it is for us as humans. It's bringing us to an end. To an end. That to me is the most incredible thing. And when you can grasp that that's what this is about, then you can begin to see these elements, these six elements, the wonder, receive, attune, influence, call, separate. You can begin to see that these six elements were the bedrock of, human awareness, just plain awareness. The foundation of, the potential for awareness, not intelligence, not experience, awareness. See, the emotional system. There's going to be no pressure to love when you disrupt the way in which the 55 and the 39 work. There is going to be no desire. There will be no human experiential way. It's really something to grasp. And that in looking at each of these aspects as we go through the mystical way, to really begin to see that what we're looking at, is more than just a circuit and its demise. But what we're looking at is everything that has made the human process so profound. This is where it is. If you travel up from the 41, our initiating codon, the beginning of every rave year, the cycle, you have to understand something, that this is only a calendar for humans. Think about that. The human experiential way, beginning in the 41st gate. This is a human trait. It's human. And this is the experiential process built into us genetically, to go through the experiential way. And in the middle, from the 39 going up to the 12, this is the way of love. And what I mean by that is, I'm not talking about love in the sense of human to human, as much as I'm talking about being able to love life and the world, and being in the world, and finding love in that. It's another pressure entirely. This passion thing, to be taken over by the power of being. and in the 19, moving up to the 40. These needs that have formed all our basic relationships, the marriage dance and the marriage bond, all our contracts and deals, our gods, our territory, our food, our everything, all the needs, all the basic needs in this stream of need. Each and every one of these channels between the root center and the emotional system, as the solar plex system goes through its transformation, these aspects, as they operate in surviving humans, they will become more and more sterile, or further and further away from their original vitality and power. It's like you don't become sterile overnight. There is this slow depletion, and there's slow diminishing of the fertility. And again, normally this is a long process. There's some that suggest, for example, that Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon lived together for as much as 70,000 years. We have 1,300. It's not like all of this is going to die off quickly. The main thing that will be affected almost immediately will be the 19, rather than speaking of even the 39. As a matter of fact, the impact of the transformation in the 55 will have a much greater impact on the 59 initially than it will on the 39, though obviously the 39 as the harmonic is deeply connected to that process. But the main impact on us as humans is going to be this, this growing sterility of the potential of the 19th gate. So in thinking about this, until we begin our process next week, where we begin by going into the details step by step, I want you to have this larger view. I think it's very important for Rave Cosmology is a very complex program. I can remember it was one of your questions early on, Kathy, about what can this possibly lead to, all of this stuff. And as I mentioned at the time, there were two things that I felt were deeply important that needed to be developed in this program. One was a profound understanding of what's coming in 2027, both in terms of the importance of being able to nurture and nourish Rave children, and at the same time to be able to give support and guidance for humankind. And the other aspect is the death aspect. That is, I think that more and more now, particularly as we approach the end, as the years go by now, we are going to see that by the time we get into the middle of this century, we're going to have a huge depletion in population. Understand what that means. That means that there are personality crystals that will never again incarnate on this planet. That is, their process is over. We have more and more human beings over the next 1,000 years or so that their lives in this incarnation is their last, and they will not return. And it is essential in many ways that we provide a service for them, that they can enter into, what is the correct process in death, and to be able to return to their bundle. The last incarnation is an important one, and its resources are intended to go back to its source. These two areas are deeply important for me, and the mystical way, understanding the mystical way in this way, a way that it has never been presented before, to really see that we're looking at these closing chapters in the way in which, the pressure of the 19th gate has so deeply influenced the 6 lines as archetypes and the way they work. One final comment. As long as I have been a teacher of human design, and now it really is getting to be a long time, there is something that I've always mentioned, and I still don't think that it's ever really attracted enough interest. And that is that it always seems to me that people in design overlook the incredible importance of the root center. I made an attempt last year, and it's available on Channel 88, to do that in talking about the format energies and transformation through the format energies. And anyone who participated in those courses understands that, you know, the root center is at the heart and core of what drives us in just about everything that you can think of. Which is kind of like a joke, because it's really the pressure that has everything to do with everything till the throat, in that sense. But I also want you to see that in being able to begin to grasp that the 6 lines of the 19, that their thematics have a continuity value to every other line, please recognize that is also true of all the gates that are there in the root. The root has an enormous influence in that way. It is this deep, deep pressure. And we are going to learn that whether we like it or not. You know, this is something to see. Pluto is in the 11-4. And it's the line of the teacher. And the potential is the difference between sage and guru. To teach something that is of value to everyone. I did that yesterday. And to teach knowledge as a guru that is relative to a few. And this is what I'm teaching now. Not everyone can ultimately be able to grasp all of this knowledge that will be presented in this program and be able to turn it to good use. It is a very different way of looking at things. But it's very important for all of you to see that there is no way that I would be doing this without you. And, you know, this is the essential relationship between a 5th line being and those that are there to hear the call. It forces me. I am under pressure. And I am under pressure to call you. And I realize deeply as a 5th line being that this is the very end of this process. And it's so important that it is documented, and it is so important that there is a generation that is aware of this, that hopefully each and every one of you in your own way will find a way to transfer the knowledge, aspects of the knowledge, to those who will need to know. But it is something that's essential. The other thing, obviously, is that it allows me to put what I think is probably intellectually the most fascinating semester I can think of doing in digital form, so it's available for a long time. And we're really here to see that what I'm describing, that we will see is going to be the great malaise and dysfunction that we are going to enter into at a worldwide level, and this will be the only information that will actually be able to explain it. So we're in for an interesting adventure.